Welcome once again to Everyday Holiness, a Faith Indy podcast brought to you by the Notre Dame Alumni Association. This is again your host, Dan Allen, Associate Director of Spirituality and Service, and we're glad to have you with us today. I'm pleased to be joined on location by Bobby Kloska, a 1990 grad of Notre Dame, and we're in his backyard in a pub, believe it or not, that's in his backyard. So we'll definitely talk about that and many other aspects of his life. But Bobby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, I told you before, this was one of my few on-location interviews, so glad to be here. So we like to start out with your early years. What are some key components of your early life that you could share with us?
I grew up in a large Catholic family of 13 children, 11 of which ended up going to Notre Dame or St. Mary's.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time together doing traditional things that people wax nostalgic about, the 80s kids, of wandering the neighborhood without supervision, being home by the time the lights are on, and all of that. So it was a beautiful childhood, a warm, loving family, very Catholic. We prayed the family rosary together. I went to high school here at Marion High School, played on the golf team, and walked on to the golf team at Notre Dame in 1986. And I was here for some great years in sports.
Yes.
We had a Heisman Trophy winner in Tim Brown. We had a national championship. We were freshmen when Lou Holtz was in his first year. And Ronald Reagan, the president, visited campus. And we had all these things happening. And it was a wonderful, wonderful way to grow up and be part of Notre Dame.
Yeah. Now, where do you fall in the birth order, and how did that affect the dynamic of your childhood?
I was the fourth oldest. There were 5 children, and then a gap of 4 years, and then 8 more.
Okay.
And out of the first 5, actually the first 6, even the one after the gap, I was the only boy. So my mother used to let us settle if what we're going to do for an outing or what TV show we would watch. We would always vote on it.
Right.
So it was always 5-1.
Outnumbered, yeah.
I lost every time. And the good thing is, though, I became really comfortable hanging out with the girls.
Sure.
And to this day, I love it when it's my daughters and my wife and me, or I love going to see my sisters. And I'm not a very girly guy, but it was just a nice thing. And I tease them as adults about always losing 5-1 on the votes.
Right.
And they've apologized and given me gifts, and they recognize that it was all true. It was funny.
That's great. And you said your Catholic faith was very important to your family growing up. What do you remember in particular about practices or time at your parish or things that were really formative for you?
I remember the sacraments were very big deals, and that we very deliberately celebrated baptisms, first communions, confirmation, those sorts of things. And the larger family of my mother and father, big Polish, we're 100% Polish on both sides going back. And we were constantly going to those celebrations, usually in the spring, and coming back. And it was sort of not just a spiritual practice, but also a cultural way to bond with family and to feel close. But my father had a great devotion to Our Lady. And I can remember when I was very young and he would get ready for work in the morning, he would do push-ups, and I would get on his back. I would sit on his back like I'm 3 years old.
Right.
And we got done one day, and I looked up, and he had this icon of Our Lady of Perpetual Help on the wall. And I said to him, "Hey, Dad, that's kind of ugly." Because I had never really seen an Eastern icon, and it wasn't like the type of devotional piety that Polish ethnicities sort of embraced.
Okay.
It was different. And he picked me up and he took me over to it. And he said, "No, Bobby, this is the most beautiful woman in the world." And then he took that opportunity to speak to me about Our Lady. And that had a profound impact. That's just one of many things. The family rosary, the whatever. We lived our faith intentionally. Sunday mornings, we had a formality to it that made it feel different. We dressed up to go to Mass. We had a sit-down breakfast. We weren't eating on the fly. We weren't fitting it in. We fit everything else around Sunday as the Sabbath. It was a day for prayer, and it was a day for family. And that was just ingrained in, and that became sort of the rhythm of our lives. It was very nice. It wasn't perfect. It was chaotic.
Sure, yeah.
We didn't always get along and whatever. But my goodness, I look back and I'm so grateful for that.
What a blessing. And I love when the domestic church dovetails well with the universal church. And you realize that as we gather around table at home, this is a foreshadowing, a foretaste of gathering around the table at the Mass. And this is all connected. And I think sometimes you look at our culture and see that lacking in other areas and some of the outcomes of that, and it makes you even more grateful for what you had.
And then I would observe, it was mostly my dad because I didn't have any older brothers, but down at the parish, he was the guy who would set up chairs for an event and then take them down afterwards. And it's something that was nonverbal. But when the event ended in the gymnasium and my dad would roll out the rolling cart to stack the folding chairs, he attacked, it was all talk, slap bags, laugh. And then when he turned into it's time to work mode, we would just go to town. And my family would just clean up the gym, and it was contagious. Then other people would see us so focused, working hard, and it was just like a beautiful nonverbal lesson that he showed us while we were growing up.
So you discussed that a lot of your family, your siblings, went to Notre Dame. When that time came for you, were you excited about that, or what was that decision like for you?
Well, I was one of the oldest. So my three older sisters went to St. Mary's.
Okay.
Then I was the first to go to Notre Dame.
Got it.
Believe it or not, now this is the 80s. And my dad was a first-generation college student. My mom went 2 years and then dropped out. It was the only place I applied.
Okay.
I applied to one school. And it was all or nothing, and I had no backup plan. And I think there were 13 people in my senior class went to Notre Dame. Out of those 13 that got in and went, I was the first to apply and the last accepted.
Okay.
So I was borderline. And here's a cool thing. So in a big family, you help raise each other. So the family is more of a project of the group than it is just individual parenting. So I was a very active big brother to my little brothers, Mike and Jeff, who ended up going to Notre Dame, living in my same dorm, Carroll Hall, winning the bookstore basketball. But when they were little, they saw me filling out my application. And they said, "What's this? What's this? What's this?" Well, unbeknownst to me, they wrote a letter of recommendation to Notre Dame on loose leaf paper in pencil. "Dear Notre Dame, we would like to recommend our big brother." And either my mom or somebody else helped them address it and send it. It was addressed to Notre Dame.
Right.
That was it.
Like Santa Claus at the North Pole. Just Notre Dame, they'll find it. We'll find it.
Well, it got to the admissions office.
Yeah.
And when I was admitted, my admissions counselor asked me when I got onto campus to come and visit. And I did. And they had the letter and said, "You're going to want this letter basically implying this got you into Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And if it were not for them in 5th and 6th grade loving me and taking that initiative, the entire course of my life could be different.
Wow.
And I'm very grateful. So when it came time for them to apply, I was trying to give them every advantage. So I'm pulling strings and doing whatever.
All the letters needed. Yeah, pay it back in that way. Wow, that's such a neat story. So once you got to Notre Dame, you mentioned walking onto the golf team, living in Carroll Hall. What are some of the memories that stick with you now of, gosh, those were just some of the gifts of that time of my life?
My first class was in the library auditorium, and we had just gone through whatever they called the orientation welcome weekend, whatever they called it then.
Yeah.
And I had met a few people, but you're still scared and you don't know anybody. But there's this vibe the first few weeks of freshman year where you can walk up to anybody and say hello because you're all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
So I walk in there and I'm feeling insecure. And I look left and I look right, and I finally see this guy I had met at a random mixer.
Yeah.
And I went and sat down next to him and these girls who were on the tennis team. They were all freshmen. And we sat down and we had that class together. And to this day, I'm still friends with all of them. And it was basically a random choice of where to sit in the first class of my freshman year.
Yeah.
And that's kind of legendary in Notre Dame lore that you're not making a 4-year decision, you're making a 40-year decision. Right. But it's true. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. Mm-hmm. So that was a beautiful thing. I just remember being a little bit of a misfit in high school, not really having a friend group that I really connected with. And when I got to Notre Dame, I thought, these are my people.
Yeah.
They laughed at my jokes. I found the same things funny. It was like easy to be friends with them. And that was really important. And then in the dorms, we had upperclassmen that were really kind to us and guided us. So there was one guy named Greg Andres who was a year older than me, and we're walking back from South Dining Hall, heading towards the Lion's Arch to go back to Carroll, which was quite a hike.
Yeah, out there.
And he peels off. And I said, where are you going? And he said, come with me. And he went to the grotto. And he said, I'm only going to be here for 4 years. So I made a promise that I'm going to visit the grotto every day. And from that day on, I too did that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I missed a day or two. But in general, every day, I stopped at the grotto and said a prayer to Our Lady, which was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the kinds of practices that stick with you and build that foundation for the rest of life. Now, I am a struggling golfer perpetually, so it sounds like you may have had more success than I have had, but I want to ask you about golf. What was interesting about that to you? What drove you to want to walk onto the golf team, and what was that like?
I had grown up working at Elkona Country Club in Elkhart, Indiana. From the time I was 11, I started caddying. So when I was 21 years old, I had worked at the same place for 10 years.
Wow.
Like quite a bit of experience in the golf world. Yeah. So we were odd ducks. They made an exception. Employees or members could not be employees, but they allowed us because we were this weird kind of family with all these kids. And so we were both members and I worked there. Mm-hmm. And my boss was a guy named George Thomas, who ended up becoming my junior and senior year, my golf coach at Notre Dame.
Oh, okay.
But freshman year, there was a character named Noel O'Sullivan. And he would walk around campus and talk to himself. And he was a PE coach, and he would say, all right, Irish, let's go play some GOLF.
Yeah.
And he'd walk around just going, Notre Dame. Yeah. And literally, he didn't seem like a human to me. He seemed like a character on Seinfeld.
Right.
And that's what, he was like larger than life and whatever. So he conducted tryouts, and I played the best golf of my life. And I had been working for it. My whole plan was to go to Notre Dame and play golf.
Okay.
I barely made it to Notre Dame. I barely walked on the golf team. When I did get my chance to play, I didn't play very well.
Yeah.
And I ended up lettering just because I was on the team contributing in whatever way I could for 4 years.
Yeah.
But I today the golf team is so good. I would even make the team.
Right.
But it was a nice experience. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a ton of time.
Yeah. And I've found that, especially in golf, like if you work at it, okay, you can drop 15 or 20 strokes pretty fast. But then
Plateau.
then it gets a lot harder.
Yeah.
And I find some parallels to the spiritual life. Okay, I go to Mass regularly and the sacraments and all that, but then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, these next steps are harder and harder.
You know what? I'm reading right now The Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross. And I never thought of it in terms of golf, but now that you say that, yeah.
Yeah. And then they're like, will I ever get any better at this? I'm trying. But yeah. And it's interesting, too, because we all have some of those childhood aspirations or things we think we want to do. And sometimes our God-given talent isn't to the level that we need it to be to fill those things. So as it got to areas of vocation and discernment and majoring in things, what was some of that process for you as you found where God had blessed you?
I was an accounting major because my dad told me to be an accounting major. And my dad, God bless him, he's been the best dad I could ever imagine. But like vocation discernment wasn't his strength.
Yeah.
He gave you practical common sense. There were 4 majors in the School of Business. It was finance, marketing, management, and accounting. And he said, if I'm paying, I'll pay for finance or accounting, but you can't be marketing or management. Those are soft things, and you're not going to get any value out of that. So which one do you want?
Okay.
And my dad was an accountant, and so I did that. I got into it by my junior year. I was so ill-suited, and my temperament and my interest, I just absolutely hated accounting. But I was too far in. And everybody graduates in 4 years. So I gutted it out and barely made it through. Meanwhile, I'm taking philosophy and theology and other things and getting like A's and B's. And in my major, I'm getting like C's. And struggling to get C's because I just hated it. That's when it started to dawn on me, okay, maybe I'm not suited for that. At the same time, I hit my plateau in golf. They recruited people over me that were better. They were improving the program. They hired George Thomas, who was like a serious golf pro, as opposed to Coach O'Sullivan, who was a PE teacher who was coaching golf.
Gotcha.
And so I was pretty worried my senior year because I had a major I hated, and I was terrible at golf, and I was thinking about a career in golf as a club pro or something. And I was just so down about it. And at the same time, I had a beautiful relationship with a girl, and she dumped me, and it threw me into a crisis. And I'll share this because I don't actually talk about this very much because it happened so long ago, but this is one of the most beautiful formative stories of my life. She studied in Europe, in London program, and I was in the era where we sold bootleg T-shirts, like Catholics
versus Convicts.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't do those. I knew those guys.
Yeah.
And I sold my own. And we made a lot of money. I paid my way to Europe twice.
Wow.
On bootleg T-shirts. Plus side hustles like working in the dining hall and doing other things. So I went to visit her, and on the last day of our visit, we talked about getting married. And we were on a bench in Hyde Park, and it was beautiful. And so I get on the airplane, and I am so pumped. I love this girl. I'm ready to commit. I go back to South Bend. I start looking at engagement rings. We had been dating a year. At that time, there was no instant communication. So she was finishing her semester and then traveling Europe a little bit. In essence, I had no communication with her for a couple of months. You didn't text. And it was like $7 a minute for a long distance phone call. So when she came back, she had gone in the opposite direction and was being very honest with me. I don't think you're the one, and broke up with me.
Yeah.
Or she asked me to come visit her at her house so we'd be on her home turf, and I knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And that night, I was despondent. I was in the darkest place. Everything was failing. Accounting was failing. Golf was failing because we had graduated. I had lost all my friends. We're all leaving. I had to come back for a couple of classes because I had to drop classes that I hadn't done well in while I was on the golf team and all the practice. So I was in the dark. Then I lose my girlfriend, or I'm about to. And I went to bed that night like contemplating suicide. And it was dark. I didn't want to hurt my family. I was thinking, how could I end my life and make it look like an accident?
Wow.
Because I didn't want anybody to think I'd do it on purpose.
Sure.
So I go to get in bed and I just start sobbing uncontrollably in a way that I had never sobbed before. And I physically hurt, like my stomach was in knots. I had tension everywhere. And as I laid there sobbing, I realized on the other side of the wall was that icon of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Yeah.
And because that bedroom shared a wall with my parents' bedroom. So for some reason, I started to pray. And I wasn't even really that into my faith at the time. I had even lapsed that. In fact, I had kind of made my relationship with this girl a god in my life.
Yeah.
So in desperation, I cried out and said, please, Mary, help me fix this relationship. And as I prayed that, I heard, no, I won't.
Yeah.
And then I said, if you can't do that, can you just take the pain away? And I thought of myself as a little boy who had fallen and I was bleeding and I had skinned my elbows and my knees and I was tugging on the skirt of Our Lady saying, help me take the pain away. And then I fell asleep. I don't know if it was 10 minutes or 5 hours later. I'm in complete darkness in my room. I never slept on my back. For whatever reason, I was sleeping on my back. And I was thrust upward and sat up in bed, jolted, shaking. Suddenly, like violently aroused. And I'm looking around and I heard a voice. But it wasn't with my ears. It was like an interior voice. And she said to me, don't worry, my child. Everything will be all right. And I paused, and I'm still stunned that I'm awake, and I just heard something. And she repeated, she said, everything will be all right. And Dan, I felt, as I sat there, the pain started to drain out of me. And it went down from my head. I remember it going through my temples, down my neck, and it was literally, I could feel it drain as though I had like holes in my toes and it was draining out. And it went down and I remember it got to like my waist and it was this weird sensation of pain, like emotional and physical pain in the lower part of my body and nothing, like purity in the upper part. And then it went through my knees and my toes and left me, and I felt completely at peace. So nothing else happened. I went to bed. I got up the next day. I went to her house. She broke up with me. And I will admit that my character at the time would be like, make this as hard as you can on her. Or get her to see what she's missing.
Right.
Or make her feel bad about it at least.
Yeah.
I resisted all of that. I told her what happened. I said, I get it. We're good. I loved you. I probably will always love you, but you're free. And I left. I came back, and I was a changed man. This is the summer of 1990. 35 years later, I'm still juicing on that vibe.
Yeah.
That is still the formative. I refer back to it all the time. So then I knew I had, at first, I prayed about it, and I started getting back into my faith. And it was about this incident with my girlfriend. Everything will be all right. Okay. Then the further I got, I started to realize that she didn't say just with that. This was like a message for my life.
Yeah.
And it became more profound that all I have to do is try to be faithful and everything will be all right. So that Bob Marley song, Three Birds, don't worry about a thing because every little thing's going to be all right.
Yeah.
I play that. I sang that all summer. And then later on, I ended up teaching at an all-boys Jesuit high school. And I was teaching theology, and I was overwhelmed. And I was getting these kids coming to me with all of these problems. And a third level, or a third meaning to that emerged. And I realized, as these kids came to me, it was my job. It was my mission in life, is to take what Our Lady said and to share that with people in crisis. And so I would get these promptings, and I would say the most basic, simple thing. They would tell me all these problems, and mom and dad, and horrible things.
Sure.
And I would listen. I would try to say obvious, not profound things because I didn't know what to say. And whenever I would say, everything's going to be all right, inevitably they'd start crying. They would tell me how much that meant to them. It was like a disproportionate reaction to a very obvious statement. And that's when I knew the Holy Spirit was working and that I was on target of what Our Lady wanted me to do. And I would say pretty much since that time, the last 35 years, it's been my mission to help people know that everything will be all right.
And it's such a simple phrase, and yet what I'm hearing you say is you really became this conduit of God's grace. And sometimes our cooperation with that, it's not like, oh, I'm not a miracle worker here, but all this grace behind me, and it really makes a difference. So for you then, how did life develop then in terms of your career, your marriage, your family? Let's get into some of those chapters.
So then I had to go back to Notre Dame, and I was very lonely, and I would sit in the basilica, the seventh pew from the back on the right-hand side, and I would look at the mural of the death of St. Joseph, and I would contemplate the meaning of my life and what death meant and what Our Lady meant, and I read spiritual books. And the next thing I knew, a Holy Cross priest named Father Michael Heppen, who had been a business professor for me, I went to confession to him at the Basilica. And then when I saw him in class, he said, I want to talk to you. This is kind of unusual, but could we go back and talk about something you said in confession? And he said, I'll put you back under the seal of the confessional, so it's... Sure. I said, yes, and we talked. And he recruited me to enter Moreau Seminary. And so, long story short, I did. And I did a candidate year. And then I went to the novitiate in Colorado Springs. And then I left after the novitiate, or at the end of the novitiate.
Yeah.
But so here's something amazing that happened that results in my marriage. The existence of my 5 children, everything was completely contingent upon a whim. So the night before I leave the novitiate, my plan was to take a Greyhound bus to Huntington Beach, California, to visit my best friend and roommate, Craig Brummel, who was out there working for Arthur Anderson. And my dad had said, I'll fly you home. But we had 12 brothers and sisters, and I feel like a failure.
Right.
I had just failed at yet another thing.
Okay.
And I didn't want to go live in my parents' basement. I would prefer to sleep on Craig's couch in an exotic place like California and figure out what to do with my life.
Yeah.
So my buddy in the novitiate, one of the brothers there, he and I stayed up really late. And I was supposed to take a bus that left at 9:30 a.m. And then you have to hit connections. It's like air travel where there's a hub and there's a layover and whatever.
Yeah.
We stayed up too late. We didn't oversleep. I got up, but he overslept. And I was like, we got to get up. You got to get me to the bus station.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, come on. There's another bus. Let's just go later. And I'm like, okay. So I took a bus that was 2 hours later. That 2 hours translated to me getting into Los Angeles 8 hours later.
Yeah.
Okay. But I got as far as Phoenix and I changed buses and we started out Highway 10 and then the bus stops for 10 minutes, gets back on, turns around, drops us off back in the Greyhound station in downtown Phoenix and says, get your bag. Bus service to Los Angeles has been indefinitely suspended. And remember, there's no cell phones. CNN was like in its infancy. Like news just traveled slower. Didn't even know. No information. Nobody can tell us a thing if you've ever done Greyhound.
Yeah.
They're not exactly known for customer service.
It's an experience.
And so I'm walking around with 2 duffel bags in downtown Phoenix, and it's starting to get dark. And I have like a phone credit card with 1 call on it. And I didn't want to alarm my parents. And I'm looking for a place to like sleep on the streets. My little sister, Lisa, was a senior at St. Mary's, and her roommate was from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay.
So I called Lisa. Lisa talked to her roommate. Her roommate called her mom. Her mom sent her other daughter to downtown Phoenix and picked me up. But not before, this all actually unfolded over 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I go into this Irish pub, and they have a TV on. The reason why Greyhound bus service was suspended was the Rodney King riots. In the bus station I was headed to, I watched burn on TV. Wow. It was in the middle of the riots. Had I gone 2 hours earlier to the earlier bus, I would have been there waiting for Craig to get off of work. I would have been in ground zero of the riots.
Wow.
And that whimsical thing. So I ended up living in Phoenix for 4 years. And I met my wife at a parish in Scottsdale. And we ended up getting engaged, got married, and we have 5 children. None of that would have happened had that terrible incident with Rodney King not happened. It really gave me a profound appreciation for divine providence and the role that God will play if you let him, and sometimes even unbeknownst to you. It's a mystery.
Yeah, I sometimes think about that in the sense of like when we get to heaven, more will be known to us, more will be understood. And there's probably going to be all kinds of things like that. That's like,
Dan, you took a left instead of a right.
Yeah.
And you have a different career because of it.
It changed everything, right? Yeah. And in the midst of it, you would never know, but that's incredible. Now, this image of Mary saying everything will be all right. I'm aware that doesn't mean everything will be easy or there won't be any suffering. And you've had some suffering and some illness in your life. So could you share that with us, please?
My wife and I taught at a Jesuit high school out there. And after 3 years, decided to go and get a master's in philosophy. So I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville. Mm-hmm. We got married at the Basilica, moved to Steubenville, started on my master's, and she got sick, got pregnant. We ran out of money, just a convergence of troubles. Mm-hmm. And I reconnected with my rector from Carroll Hall, Father Mike Sullivan, mm-hmm. who was a professor at Holy Cross College. Mm-hmm. And he pulled me into Holy Cross before I completed my master's with the understanding that I would to teach philosophy and to do campus ministry, which there was no campus ministry. There was nothing there were no sacraments. There was nothing at Holy Cross at the time. Okay. So we moved back to South Bend and we started doing that. It took me like 5 years more or 6 years to finish my thesis, to pass my language exam, to get everything done. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, she's a stay-at-home mom. We're having kids. I'm not making much. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm making $30,000 we're poor.
Yeah.
And then in May of 2003, I get diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Mm. And that required 6 months of chemotherapy, 6 weeks of daily radiation. I had to keep working through the whole thing, which was fine. In 2005, the cancer came back. We had to do a stem cell transplant, which by the time Hodgkin's is easily cured, 85% of people take care of it on the first shot, and it never comes back.
Okay.
Came back for me. Now the survival rate is going down. Mm. So what they do is they harvested my stem cells, put them in a freezer, then gave me super lethal doses of chemotherapy, wipes everything out, wipes out my immune system. I'm like in a germ-free environment for over a month. Everybody who comes in is covered from head to toe with stuff. And then they rescue you and they have this 12-hour window to rescue you, and they rescue you with your stem cells, and your stem cells go and rebuild your immune system. It's like a reboot of your computer.
Yeah.
To keep the cancer away, because your immune system fights cancer. It didn't. So the cancer came back. Now my survival rate is really low, and we're doing an allogeneic stem cell transplant, which is using somebody else's immune system. Mm-hmm. And that is hard because there's a disease called graft versus host disease, which means even though you're kind of a match, your body can attack its rescuing stem cells and vice versa. That was even more difficult, more brutal, but that worked. And that was in 2007. Since 2007, I have not gotten cancer. Mm-hmm. But what happened was it worked to keep the cancer away, but I've had chronic health problems with viruses and other things since then. Mm-hmm. So I've had lifetime 35 surgeries, 24 on my vocal cords, 3 bouts of cancer, 35 surgeries. I'm proud of this because a bone marrow biopsy is one of the most painful conceivable things, where it's basically a corkscrew screwed into your bone. Yeah. And I've had 19 of them.
Oh my gosh.
And it just makes me feel like I'm tough. Like I'm bad.
You're a record. Yeah. You're a record holder there. Gosh.
So for the last 22 years, since 2003, I've been hospitalized more times than I can count, usually once or twice a year. Mm-hmm. And then due to the radiation I received, I have radiation-induced cardiotoxicity. So in 2021, I had a heart attack. and there's nothing they can do about it. I need bypass surgery, but if they cut into my arteries or anything around my heart, it'll just fall apart because the longer you get away from a radiation event, the more degradation there is. And so I'm not even a good candidate for a transplant because it's just too far gone. So I say it's if you have an old furnace in your basement and it's just barely holding together, if you try to fix it, you'll break it and you'll have to replace it.
Yeah.
But I don't have another life to replace.
Yeah.
So what you do is you ride it out, you try to make the conditions as good as you can and don't touch it and just milk it. And that's what we're doing with my heart.
Okay.
So I'm expected to die prematurely. They said I'm taking 15 to 20 years off the life of your heart when they gave me the radiation. I'm 58. It means I'm approaching 80 in my heart.
Okay.
And, it's accelerated my thinking of like kind of getting older and thinking about life and legacy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I tell you, it's not a bad way to live. It's very clarifying. And the big decisions are not hard. My problem is like the administrative tasks of life do not hold my interest.
Right.
And I so easily procrastinate them or put them off because I really don't care.
Yeah.
And yet that's oftentimes gets me in trouble, and I wish I were better. But that's what I have to struggle with is to like not be late on paying a bill or like
file the taxes
or change the water softener, filter or whatever. Those are things that don't compel me because I live in such a life and death mentality that it's harder for me to just do the mundane things. But like I said, there's a blessing to it, right?
Yeah. There's this, of course, the spiritual practice of memento mori and remember your death and think about things on an eternal perspective. And too often we do get distracted by the everyday, but it seems like it's both a cross and a blessing that you've got this always before you to say, I really need to cherish each day. And I get the sense from being in this pub, that's part of cherishing the day and the people and the chances you get to interact with people. So could you tell us how this pub came about and what the ministry that happens here?
It is all tied to what I just said. When I was diagnosed, I had 4 kids, and then when it came back the first time, we had a 5th. We had to change houses. Our lease ran out right in 2003 as I'm being diagnosed. And so we were trying to get into this neighborhood because we knew Notre Dame had designs on it, and it was just so convenient. And I don't know, it was just a cool neighborhood, but it was run down. When we bought this house, one of the conditions of sale was that the seller had to dig up the embedded Volkswagen Bug in the backyard that had weeds overgrowing it. Okay, that gives you an indication of the condition of the property. Right. It had been neglected. This building, we're sitting in the pub, had a sagging ceiling and the roof was collapsing and you could see the sky. Okay. And my father said, I would just tear that down. Like it was disgusting. Yeah. Fortunately, as we got this house that had good bones, we bought it from really good people, but they just didn't, keep it up. The whole neighborhood was kind of like that. Yeah. Fortunately, I had cancer. And when you have cancer and you have all these cute kids, you become a sympathetic figure. And everybody wants to help you. So what do? They offer food. We were getting so much food that we didn't know what to do with it. And we were like throwing it away and you felt terrible. Right. So when you buy a house and they say, what can I do for you? Instead of nothing, said, do you like to paint? And I only said that once or twice, and all of a sudden, a Holy Cross brother at Holy Cross College, Brother Chris Dreyer, helped galvanize a group of students and family, friends, and then neighbors that I was just meeting as we worked on renovating our house and our property. 200 people spent 3.5 months doing our house.
Wow.
New floors. We pulled out all the carpet, did the hardwood floors. New copper piping, plumbing, furnace, air conditioner, painted everything. Pseudo renovation of the bathroom, pseudo renovation of the kitchen, landscaping, removing stuff, painting the fence. It was just incredible. And through all 3 bouts of cancer, the community, the way that they loved my family was so overwhelming that if I lived 10,000 years trying to pay it back, I could never pay it back. It was the most beautiful thing. If you would have told me in May of 2003, when I was diagnosed with cancer, if you would have laid out the suffering, which has been significant, but I feel like if I talk about that too much, I start to, it's almost like bragging how much I've suffered.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just say, it was brutal. I could tell you stuff that was brutal. But if you would have laid out the suffering and the blessings, I would have chosen it. Cancer has been one of the most beautiful, fulfilling things of my life because I see God's grace. And you said something earlier, you said it's both a cross and a blessing. The motto of the Congregation of Holy Cross is that the cross is a blessing.
Yeah, our only hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ave crux spes unica, hail the cross. And that was certainly true. And all of my formation in Holy Cross spirituality of the cross and the writings of Basil Moreau, they all came to roost. And they're all true. And over the years, like we took our car to a mechanic, Ray Snyder and the Sunoco on Portage. And they're big into Chet Wagner baseball and stuff. He's the mechanic for the poor.
Yeah.
I was poor. So I took my car into him and said, my wife is going to be driving every day to the University of Chicago to see me while I'm confined for over a month and might die in the process. Could you please make sure the car is seaworthy? It's not going to break down. Recharge it with Freon because the air conditioner didn't work anymore. Could you find like a radio or something? This is before we streamed.
Yeah.
And because it didn't have music. And he said, okay. When I came back with her to pick up the car, he said, get out of the car. We got out. He called us over. He said, I don't want your wife to have to drive that car. So I went out and bought you a van. Okay, let that register. Our mechanic bought us a van so that my wife would be safe driving to Chicago every day. And he gave it to us.
Wow.
And he fixed our car.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Those are the sorts of things that people did. And like you see the grace of God, and my kids saw it, that the Sisters of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration would like break their cloister. They would break their rules and babysit our kids and take them up on the hill and brought joy and laughter into the house. My sister Mary, just different, too many people to mention, loved my family. So as we saved this building, and I always thought I would love to have a place away from the house and the commotion. We had 5 kids in a small house. There were 7 of us. All right.
A little peace and quiet from time to time.
It took 15 years of incremental renovations here. First, we fixed the roof and rebuilt a wall and whatever. But in about 2018, we got it to the point where my wife would walk into it, where she had spent pretty much 15 years refusing to even enter.
Yeah, that's your project.
It was so gross. There were like animal skeletons in here, and it was disgusting. But we had it cleaned up enough, and then I got an old TV, and we started watching ball games, and then it just evolved. And I think in 2019, we put in the bar. And one day I went and got all the photos that are on the walls, are all family photos or whatever that were in boxes under the stairs.
Yeah.
And I just hung them up randomly. So everything in here has meaning. Mm-hmm. And then between the bar and the decor, people were like, this is like a pub. Mm-hmm. And now it's taken on a life of its own, where Carter Sneed gave us our piano. Mm-hmm. They were moving. And my neighbor, Mike, who's a professor, Seelinger at Notre Dame, built the liquor cabinet. Mm-hmm. And people were like sending me a refrigerator would show up and this and that. So now it's become a place where we gather. It's like a place to go to be loved and to be seen. And we have this bell that I'm going to ring it. Yeah. So when people walk in, the bell rings, and it's the custom that everybody turns to the door and says, hey, or welcome, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I've left and gone to the bathroom and somebody else is back at the bar and I walk in, it's my pub and I started there. It makes you feel fantastic.
Yeah.
It makes you feel seen and welcome, and it's just this beautiful thing. Yeah. So we have all these conversations late at night. We have a men's rosary on Thursday mornings. Mm-hmm. This morning we had 9 guys go around the circle. Really basic. Say your intentions, pray the rosary, punch each other in the shoulder and say, hang in there and see you next week. But so there's prayer, there's community, there's music. We have sing-alongs. The Notre Dame Glee Club loves coming here. Mm-hmm. They're actually going to flash mob an upcoming event. Uh-huh. And I was with them last night to plan it out. We gather the Notre Dame Glee Club alumni in the area, and we mix them in with a handful of the current guys. Yeah. We had one time in April where the oldest guy here was for the class of 59. And the youngest guy was 26, a 67-year difference. And all we were doing was telling stories, drinking beer, and singing from the common repertoire of the Glee Club. It was fantastic. Mm-hmm. So we do all of these things. We have fundraisers, meet and greets, whatever we can. And it has become a ministry in a way that people think, that's weird, or he's just justifying having a cool man cave in the backyard. This is not a man cave.
It's much more than that.
It's not a man cave.
Yeah, no, I get that sense just walking here the first time. Off to the side here, I see a picture that I'm familiar with, and I think a lot of people are. And you were involved in that picture of a winter scene at the grotto. Could you just briefly tell us about that picture?
So I went to Mass. We messed up our showers. We had one shower for 7 people.
Right.
And one Sunday morning, we timed it wrong. And either I was not going to shower or I was going to have to go to a later Mass. Yeah. So they all went to our regular parish, St. Matt's, and I went to the Basilica alone. Mm-hmm. When I left the Basilica, I was walking back to my car, and it was snowing an unusually heavy, slow snow. You only see it once a year, or even if that, where just massive snowflakes falling very slowly. Mm-hmm. And there was a kid praying, and he was absolutely still. And as I watched, I'm watching the snow pile on him, and it just touched me. I thought I should take a picture of this. So I pull up my camera, and I'm like, no, if you're going to do it right. Because I was kind of on the side coming down those stairs, And so I went to like where the benches are so I could get the full picture of the grotto. And as soon as I took the picture, my phone shut off. It was almost as if I had hit the off button when I hit, and it wasn't that cold. I had 42% charge. There was no reason. So I went home and I didn't have much memory. And about 10 hours later, before I went to bed, I had to clear memory for my phone to work. And so I remembered I had taken these pictures. I was going to eliminate pictures. And I look, and there's this image of a white blob directly over the kid praying. And I didn't see anything when I took the picture. And the way that it interplays with the rocks of the grotto and the form of the blob makes it look like Our Lady. I kind of had this, I didn't even want to say it because I didn't want to be sensationalistic.
Sure.
So here's what I did. I posted it on Facebook without comment, just to see if anybody else naturally saw it. I didn't want to lead them to believe.
Right.
And then I sent it to some of my Notre Dame buddies. And I went to bed. And I got up the next morning, and my phone is blowing up. And my social media, there were like 1,000 shares of my post. And then you would click on those, and there were derivative shares. And guys who I would not expect are texting me saying, I have tears in my eyes. I can't stop crying looking at this photo. So then a few days goes by, and I put it on a blog. And it's like the first real blog post. I had kind of set up this blog, but never got around to doing it.
Yeah.
It had got 250,000 hits. I have the analytics. And since then, I think that was 2016, December. Since then, it's gone like mini viral several times. And now these AI-generated YouTube things pick up the story and turn it into a video. And like occasionally it's half incorrect and I try to correct it, but it's like out there, it's beyond what I can track down.
Yeah.
But I'm now sure that millions of people have seen this. And I got so much correspondence about it that I actually injured myself, carpal tunnel syndrome. I spent 2 or 3 nights all night long trying to answer everybody who had written to me, because if you write to me and it means something, I feel like you need an answer.
Sure.
And I had to take a week off of typing to let my hands heal.
Yeah.
And then there's all these layers of meaning of who the kid is. And somebody sent a picture of Our Lady that predates the photo, but looks like the photo. And then I found the artist, and it's the only painting she's ever done.
Wow.
And it has a story about Our Lady comforting her. And it's almost unbelievable. You'd think I'm making it up. She took out a second mortgage on her house to give away free prints of this painting she did when her son died. With it's the only painting. She doesn't even know how to paint. And had the same thing. It went viral 10 years previous in ways that you could go viral before the digital age.
Yeah.
And then the kid grew up on Peter Kintz's farm, which is the farm off of Juniper, just north of the credit union.
Right.
That provided the stones to the grotto.
For the grotto. Oh my gosh.
And then the last thing, and I'm just giving you highlights. There's a lot more.
I'm sure we could do a whole.
Right. The grotto was dedicated by Father Corby in August of 1896. And you remember, Lourdes was a French apparition, and the Congregation of Holy Cross were French. So all the people at Notre Dame at that time were highly connected to France. So all their families, whatever, they're hearing about it. Wow, The first idea for a shrine was Our Lady of La Salette. which was another French apparition that predates Lourdes. But then Lourdes came on the scene and was dominant, so they did Lourdes.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be dedicated on August 15th, which is the Feast of the Assumption.
Right.
And the archives does not explain why. But I did find where it said they changed the dedication from August 15th to August 5th. And if you go to the grotto, on the dedication stone, that's like a diamond set into the side, it's the Feast of Our Lady of Snow, anticipating by the 120 years that a snowflake falling in front of the camera shutter, which is what I think that is,
Yeah.
would have such an effect on so many people. And it was dedicated inexplicably on the Feast of Our Lady of Snow.
Yeah.
It was just amazing stuff we would find out
Yeah.
about this.
I've got chills even just thinking about it, and even this connection to this really dark time early in your life and praying to Mary and having that sense of her help and of her intercession. So we'll close appropriately then with holiness. All these practices and stories are hitting on all kinds of things, but the theme of the podcast is holiness, and I think the way that we often come to holiness is through Mary and the saints and other people in our lives. So who would you say have been some of the people who you've admired in terms of their holy life, and then what has been helpful to you as you strive in all the crosses that you've carried and the help and the grace that you've received from other people? How are you still trying to live a holy life?
It's like when you're a kid and you're asked for like your favorite food and you like so many foods that you don't even know where to begin. So like it's a very hard question for me, not because I have no examples. It's how do I pare it down to say. So I go back to my father, who in his own way just poured his life out for his wife and his children in an imperfect way. But you know what? All of his imperfections, we forgive him. Why? Because he loved us. And I think that's one of the great, John Paul II was a great influence on me. He was imperfect. Why do I still think he's great? Because he loved us and he loved God. And so maybe the lesson for me is that holiness, you strive for perfection. You try to be perfect, but you're not going to be. And love will make up for a multitude of sins and imperfections. So I saw that in my dad. I saw it in John Paul II. I was surprised when Mother Teresa died and people came at her like some secular people. I'm like, you're missing the point here. Okay, maybe she's not perfect. But who's perfect? If perfection, you couldn't have any heroes.
Right.
A hero does not need to be perfect. So in holiness in my own life, I think it's as much as possible to live in the presence as much as possible, and to Saint Therese, the little flower, to sanctify every little moment and to do little things in a way with great love. Because I feel like in my life, I sort of feel like an underachiever, that I never did the big things that I dreamt of doing as a child. I had grandiose vision for what I wanted, even through college or whatever. And now I've realized that my real calling is not to greatness like that, but to holiness. And a lot of times that means literally smiling at the gas station attendant at Speedway because she gets a lot of crap. And for me to be kind and to connect, or to pause for a second and not just say thank you and avert my glance and walk away, but to say thank you, eye contact, 1,000 and then go. If you do it too long, you're weird. Or to pass someone on the sidewalk and to say good morning.
Mm-hmm.
I am so affected by other people's vibes.
Mm-hmm.
And vibe is contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And you can easily ruin somebody's day if you wanted to.
Sure.
I think holiness is trying to do the opposite, to lift up, to love, to dignify, and to really set time aside to pray.
Mm-hmm.
And more than anything, like being just relentless, that I will never give up on my commitments to prayer, even when I'm empty, even when it's dark, even when I don't feel a thing. So those are the things. My wife helps because being married has been an opportunity for holiness.
Mm-hmm.
Kids, when they are succeeding and when they're challenging.
Yeah.
And the cross. The cross can be beautiful and is a blessing.
Mm-hmm. And it goes to the very foundations of why we started this podcast in the first place, because there are the John Paul II and Mother Teresa's, and it seems like, gosh, I'll never measure up to that, or my life doesn't even fit that mold at all. But the point of it is all the baptized are called to holiness. That's not what it's about. It's not aspiring to be exactly like an Oscar Romero or Dorothy Day or whoever you want to name in the communion of saints. It's about your particular vocation and the place that you are in the circumstances. And it just strikes me, Bobby, that through some many trials and some surprises that you have found that and come to be at peace about that, and just living in such a fully alive way, that I'm just honored to talk to you and to share your story today.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
All right. That concludes this very special episode of Everyday Holiness, a Faith Indy podcast. As always, we invite you to subscribe to the podcast, to give it a rating, especially if you enjoyed it, and to share it with someone who you really think might benefit from hearing this story and other stories that we share. Also, we invite you to subscribe to our Faith Indy Daily Gospel Reflection at faith.indy.edu/signup. There we let you know about the reflection of the day for each day's gospel, as well as future episodes of the podcast. Until next time, thank you for being with us, and God bless you all.